Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Jim Christiana. We're going to talk about marketing. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thanks for having me, Alicia.
All right, so let's start by talking a little bit about your business. I love for our listeners to have a bit of context so they know, who is this guy that we're going to be listening to for the next 20 to 30 minutes.
So I started back in the end of 2018, a marketing and communications firm. Um, and we've worked in about 20 different industries. So we have a kind of a broad range of industries we've worked in. And we take an omnibus approach. So anything that's the visual, verbal, or the strategy piece of marketing and comms, we deliver. And so look forward to talking to your listeners about maybe some of the specifics of what we've done in the past, but that's what we do.
All business owners understand that they need to do marketing. It's sort of a love hate, I think, that a lot of people have because not all marketing yields necessarily the instantaneous outcome that one would hope for. And I know it's especially common for newer business owners who don't have a lot of experience with marketing to get into things like pay-per-click advertising or even running a promotion in a magazine or on TV or whatever, and the return on their investment is little to nothing in some cases. It can be quite discouraging. And then, of course, there are the more seasoned business owners that maybe have been kind of like bootstrapping it, and now they want to take it to the next level. And so they're willing to invest in a marketing firm or, specific tactics to grow their business. And it can be a little intimidating because there are so many people saying different things. And there's a lot of people saying the same thing, but it doesn't make any fucking sense if you don't know what it means. And it is sort of like although it's a critical piece of business, it also has a pretty substantial learning curve. And a lot of people who are busy in their business, growing their thing, don't have the desire or the time to really learn all of those nuances. So I'd like to start there because I know that we've got people who are listening who kind of fall into some of those different categories. And those are the people who are really, I think, going to benefit most from this conversation. Those who want to grow, they know they're ready to take it to the next level. But when it comes to marketing, it's definitely a gray area for them.
And it's getting harder. I mean, in the sense that there's new platforms almost, it seems, every week. The younger demographics are getting harder and harder to reach. The landscape is changing. If I told you that, I think it's 94% of internet experiences now start on search, right? And 67% of website traffic starts on search. And so, to be honest, when you think about those numbers, and usually your website is your keystone of your marketing plan, it's the epicenter of who you are, what you do, why you do it. You spent a lot of money to get it to the point that it is now, and you're probably still not completely happy with it unless it was just recently done. And now you just have this new phenomenon, and it's frustrating, sure. And there's plenty of horror stories of throwing good money and getting bad results, getting no ROI, whether you should do traditional, whether you should do owned media, paid media, PR. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. And so when you think about search and SEO, for instance, one piece of the omni-channel approach, there's a lot of people out there that have been, promising, over promising and under delivering. And you get a lot of executives that just don't have time, or business owners that don't have time to get to the bottom of it. So oftentimes they hire somebody internally, and that's not necessarily the right fix, because if you need somebody to show up with a camera or lights or microphones and to produce video, one person can't do that. It could just be frustrating. So yeah, I think there's really a way to thread the needle. I think the best firms specialize in the interviewing process, figuring out what you quickly, right? Because that's another thing about it, Alicia, is that the onboarding process is so exhausting to bring on a new agency, right? And they got to go through their process: who you are, what you do, why you do it, who you're selling, what's your target audience, what's the target demographic, owned media audits, all of that. It's exhausting, and so their eyes roll over. But the good news is, what I've seen is when a firm gets it right and builds that relationships and quickly exceeds expectations, um, the more and more trust that they earn, the more and more access to the business, and I think the more they can exponentially help the company grow.
You alluded to something, but you didn't really go into it too much. And I would love to focus there for a moment. And that's, there is not really a one size fits all approach. Businesses are very, very different. And the approach to market that business is also going to be dependent on a variety of different factors. So I would love to spend a little bit of time there on. Now, obviously, you can't provide guidance on, because there is
Mm-hmm.
no one size fits all approach, but maybe some of those kind of like nuances, right?
Yeah.
So, are there some fundamentals that people should be mindful of, whether they're hiring an agency or they are attempting to build out their own marketing division? Things to maybe be on the lookout for, like, don't fall into that trap, or hey, this is sort of like a fundamental principle of marketing to be aware of, and so if that's not being offered up, that should be a red flag for you.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really important, and it's so common I see, is that those hiring managers, whether they're executives or CMOs, they work in a particular industry, and so they're looking to hire an agency. And the safest bet for them is to hire an established agency that's been around. And what's worse is the safest bet from them to kind of cover their ass if this all goes wrong is, well, this firm has extensive experience in our industry, education, higher education, right? This firm. And the problem is, with those firms that are that specialized, yes, that hiring manager covers their ass because it's like, well, they did excellent stuff. But that also means that you're probably getting some cookie cutter product, right? They've seen it once. They're experts in marketing for this particular industry. The problem, I think, is that most people want to stand out. They want to cut through the white noise. They want to be outliers and innovators in their industry. In my opinion, you can't be an innovator if you're hiring an established industry firm. So what do? Right? Take a chance, like we already talked about. Like, I've already invested. They're already frustrated. They've spent too much money already. So what I think is the process that the agency goes through, and whether or not they can create creatives, deliverables across a broad spectrum. That's what I love about our agency, right? It doesn't matter if we've worked in healthcare, a law firm, construction. We love creating award-winning products and videos, websites that are cut across different industries. And it actually makes us better as a firm, because what do we have to do? We come into a brand new industry we haven't done before. Oftentimes, we're going to exceed those expectations because we're getting down on the ground floor. We're doing additional research on our own time. We're being aggressive on the price because we see this as a portfolio opportunity. And we're drawing on all of our experiences from other industries. And and at the core of everything is, in my opinion, marketing is a value proposition, right? The client needs to know their value proposition. The internal marketing team needs to know the value proposition. The managing partner at the firm or the creative director at the firm needs to know that value proposition. And it's the epicenter. And so oftentimes we're trying to actually help the client discover what their true value proposition is, because they don't have it down to 5 or 7 words. They know their products, but and we got to pull it out of them. And so that's what I think the interviewing process, that we call it the discovery phase. That discovery phase is critical to the end product. So many times people just want to jump to the end product, and I get that. Like, at the end of the day, the executive is like, I want good shit. Bring me something that's going to blow my mind. I respect that. I just need somebody to talk to or a few people to talk to internally that can kind of really answer my questions. I'll try to be as efficient as possible, but the answers to these questions, we have 7 of them. The answers to these questions are going to be the root cause of us giving you great shit.
I love that. It's really frustrating. And this kind of comes around to something that you had said just a little while ago about these sort of kind of cookie cutter. Um, you sound like everybody else in your industry. The drawing out that unique proposition, your USP, right? The thing that makes you different, better than everybody else. That is what makes your marketing stand out. And that is what makes your marketing compelling to your target client or customer. I've actually worked with consultants that spent about 15 minutes getting such a superficial, high level overview of my business that the shit that they gave me was practically irrelevant. And that is incredibly frustrating. And so, for those quote busy executives that don't want to take the time, you are saving yourself so much time by doing it right than wasting so much time and money doing it wrong and then having to go back and do it right because you're not getting positive results.
So I'd say couldn't agree more. And what I would say is, okay, how do we make this easy for your listeners? Like, how do we make this easy? Give me one question to ask my internal team. Give me a red flag. Here's what I would say. Any company with more than $1 million of revenue or wants to get to $1 million in revenue should have a relationship with an agency, which means your internal marketing team must be able to answer the question of who's our agency of record, who's our go-to agency. And if they can't answer that in a split second, you got a problem. Because here's the frustration that I see. I had somebody ask me recently, what makes the best client? I said the best client, it has a internal team that embraces an agency relationship, because that pipeline of intel discovery fuels the outflow of us, but the inflow of good shit that they want, right? That CEO executive. I don't know of a company that has the analytic tools, the production equipment, the voiceover talent, all of the pieces that go to making a great ad, the visual, the verbal, and the strategy. I don't know anybody that has it all internally, right? Somebody has to have the cameras and the equipment, right? And so if your people internally are taking an anti-agency relationship, they're not in the best interest of your company. And the agencies that don't respect your internal teams should be fired immediately. And I see that too. There's this arrogance within this marketing industry or the agency industry. When we come in, we're going to do our own thing, right? Like, we'll get to your unique selling proposition. We'll discover who you are, what you do, and why you do it. It's really us. Like, no, screw you. You should be fired immediately and bring in somebody that respects your people too.
I love that. I want to shift gears.
Yeah.
Because this audience is probably appreciating our marketing dialogue, but I know that they're also going to appreciate hearing from you as the founder of your business. And one of the few questions that I ever ask a guest is if there is one mindset obstacle that you've personally had to overcome in order to get to where you are today that you'd be willing to share with us, knowing that one is only one of probably many because we're all doing our inner work. But this is, a real raw conversation to dispel a lot of these myths and misconceptions that just because you've achieved success in your business that you had it all figured out or you had all the advantages. And that's just simply not the case. So is there anything you'd be willing to share with us about your own personal journey?
Yeah, I think my journey as the owner, a managing partner, founder of a company that I started, right? I created a vision. I went out and assembled a really talented team. But here's the one thing that I didn't realize: how few days in a year your growth opportunities come. Like people, they talk like the word grit, right? Like that's the character trait that I think I'm describing, but I think it's more than just saying you have to have grit. Like appreciate, look at next year, look at 2023 and say, like, I might have 5 days next year where I'm going home spiking the football. Like I'm ready to have a celebratory drink. Like you get to celebrate maybe 5 days in a year in order to have 20, 30, 40% growth. And so just recognize that that is a very small percentage of your year that your growth days come from. And I'm a competitive SOB, right? But what I've had to realize, especially when you're just starting out and you're having those wins, those incremental growth, but you hit a plateau. Like people think business is like this. Like no, it's like this. You're here, then you're here, then you're here, then you're here. It's like this plateau. And so once you get to the plateau portion, just know that you're only going to get a few days a year, a few days an entire year. And sometimes I think, and that's probably the season that I'm in, 4 or 5 years on the job, like had to change, bought out my business partner, kind of retooled a little bit. And so now I think my plateaus are going to be over the course of 24 months, right? And so just know that.
I love that you brought up this misconception that success is this, progressive uphill climb. That's there's all these like memes and it's almost kind of cliche now because anybody who's been in business for any length of time gets that that's just simply not the case. But still, there's this psychological fuckery that if you see someone else succeeding, that they're on this uphill, like they're riding the escalator up, and you're looking at your plateau and you're like, what is wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we recognize that this is natural, it's normal, it's okay. Even the most successful businesses have plateaus and they have ups and they have downs, but that does not mean that they're not successful and that they are
Right.
right. And so it's a really important reminder. All of us need it from time to time. And if you've come off of one of those wins, sometimes you forget that
Right.
it's natural to have plateaus and downs in your business. And for anyone who's going through that, it's a little humbling, it's a little bit of a reality check, and sometimes it's even scary to come down off of that and be like, where's all this momentum that I was feeling before, instead of remembering that it's okay. You're going to have more wins, you're
Yeah.
going to have more ups, you're going to have more of those incline moments as well.
Yeah. What it makes you think of is like people think that success doesn't come with consequences, right? You define the way you said, defining success, your definition of success. And we look and the comparison is the root of everybody's joy, right? But we compare whether that's within our industry or other leaders, and it's like, what do I have to do? You might not be willing to do what you have to do, right? If you want 30%, if that's your definition of growth, or year over year, double digits, I want to put X to the bottom line. You might not be willing to do what that takes, and that's okay. For instance, I have two little kids, a 3.5-year-old and a 6-year-old, and there are certain things that I'm not willing to do for success. Even my own, that 5 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, I'd grind it away, right? But and it's okay. Like uh, I don't know. I tend to be a windshield kind of person, and not really wins and losses. You got to have a short memory, but I think reflection is really really helpful.
That is actually gold right there, what you just said. I don't think I've had any other guests in over 100 episodes that have made that point, but it's such a valuable one that there are sometimes things that are required of you to get to certain goals, to certain milestones. And it is not always congruent with your now values. As a mom myself, I prioritize my family time. And so I was actually just on a coaching call with my coach, and we were talking about some marketing things. I've got a new book that's going to be coming out in the spring. We're kind of talking about, some of like the build up for that. And, we were talking about when's a good time to do lives. And it's like, well, a lot of my clients, all my clients are business owners. So during the day, if they're not doing a session with me, they're not hanging out on social media to watch a live.
Right.
And he's like, well, how do you feel about maybe doing it in the evening? And I said, no, that time's off limits. And that's because that's congruent with my value. Now, does it really make that much of a difference? Maybe not, but certainly it is important to have that depth of clarity within ourselves. Hey, this is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not. And if that means that I don't get X result, I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I always say whether you're running for higher office, you're trying to start a business, or you want to be a professional athlete, the formula is actually not complicated. It is actually a very simple formula, but it's not easy, right? The formula is simple. Like there's a consequence. Like for you to, sell more books, like you probably in a certain circumstance, like, yeah, I'll grind that out in the evening. Yeah, the nights, weekends. But now it's kind of like, no, I don't. And that's cool. And in fact, I think it's healthier. I think it's also seasonal. For instance, my daughter, she's 3.5. Like when she starts going to kindergarten, first grade, it's going to be different than it is, driving her 45 minutes one way to daycare. Similarly, my son is 6.5. He's in first grade. I'm the coolest dude in the world to him. And so he wants to be around me. But pretty soon that's not going to happen. It's going to be like, oh, well, he wants to do things with his friends or what have you, and it's seasonal. But I think when that moment comes where you and I and people like us, we can do those extra things, we can put that time back in. I think we're going to be even more dangerous, so to speak. We're going to be even more effective because we're going to have perspective, and we're it's not going to feel like a grind. We're going to feel recharged and have our priorities in line.
It's powerful. And hopefully it gives a couple other people listening permission to do the same if they're not already. Because you're right, it is so much healthier. I would love to continue on this trajectory. It looks
I
like you
know.
want to say something. I'm going to let you say
Yeah,
something
there's
before I
one
shift
other
gears.
thing. I think so much too is about creating a culture as owners and executives is about creating a culture. And we have, I mean, I'm blessed. If I've done one thing right in my professional life, it's hired great people. And our staff right now is pretty young and they're in that phase of their career where they're just putting their foot on the gas and they want to go, 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 go. And I want to embrace that. But I want them too to see that, you know what, later on, this company values what they truly think matters and I matter, right? And what I would tell them is now is the time to put your foot on that gas so that you can be in a position to make the changes that you and I have made. And I think creating that kind of culture, I think is really important because it's also scary culture. If every business owner was Elon Musk, sleeping in their office, working 20 hours, 22 hours a day, making those sacrifices, and they are sacrifices. I think it's a little intimidating for some of those employees to think, oh, that's what the expectation is, right? And so therefore, I don't, that I think it starts to stunt their growth, their professional growth. So I think creating a culture that prioritizes time and loyalty appropriately matters.
I agree. Absolutely. There's also something to be said about the aspiring entrepreneur who thinks that that's who they have to be and what they have to do. And that's just simply not the case.
Yeah, it's really not.
So let's make sure that our listeners know how they can connect with you because you do have an incredible service that you offer. And now, are you only in certain locations?
I mean, our mothership is in just outside of Pittsburgh. People can find us on m7.agency. But we have clients all around the country. There's no place we wouldn't go. And so in some ways, the world is all of our oyster, and nowadays, uh, we're gonna chase opportunity wherever they are. So yes, physical location, but actual locations, no, we're limitless.
Perfect. Love it. So website is, you said,
M7 dot agency.
got it.
And you can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, M7 dot agency.
Okay, awesome. I want to thank you so much, Jim. This has
Yes,
been
thank you.
a fun conversation. I really love your perspective. And I know we probably could have gone a lot deeper on the conversation, but because I can't keep you here all day,
I understand.
we
But I
will.
also want to say thank you for your leadership to give people like myself and others an opportunity and provide helpful, meaningful, substantive content. It's a rare commodity in this day and age. So thank you too.
Well, I appreciate that. And that is my passion. This is a passion project for me. I do this very much for the guests as well as for the listeners. It's a platform where we can just be real and empower one another because we are change makers, and a lot of people are doing some really, really, really cool stuff out there, and we've got to stop the crazy competition mindset, get into the collaboration mindset, and make this world a better place.
Amen.
Of course, I'm going to thank our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.